And joining me this evening is Dr. Shashi Tharoor, multiple-term MP from the state of Kerala, which is now currently actually reeling under a massive devastation. Dr. Tharoor, it's a sad day, but I still welcome you to NDTV.
It is very sad, Nikunj. We're hearing of over 200 deaths and 500 houses destroyed. Many, perhaps a couple of hundred more people are still feared trapped under the debris. So it really is a very, very sad day.
Dr. Tharoor, I'll come to the politics and the management of it all slightly later. But what are your initial thoughts on this tragedy? Was there any way that it's always very tricky dealing with nature, but could there have been a way to minimize at least the casualties in this tragedy?
Well, as you know, the Home Minister claimed today that warnings had been given to the state government. The state government claims that they had only been given the lowest level of warning and not the red alert. And indeed, it's very difficult to predict the worst of all of these because the fundamental reality we live with, Nikunj, is that Kerala is ecologically very fragile. We've had in the last few years major challenges from climate change. There was a severe drought in 2015, the devastating Oki cyclone of 2017, significant flooding in 2018 and 19 that were certainly stories on your news. Lots and lots of landslides in Wayanad, which took much smaller numbers of lives, but lives have been lost in 2018 during the floods. In 2019, a place called Puthumala in Wayanad, which claimed 17 lives, more landslides in 21 and 22. So it's not as if we have never seen any of this before. The challenge is how do we predict them so we can evacuate people before the worst happens. And that's something that surely we ought to be able to develop the technological and other skill to be able to do more effectively. I don't think the blame game is where we should be going when lives are at stake right now and we're trying to rescue people. What we need to do is create systems that work better. Now, there's been a lot of talk of the Gadgil Commission report, which had said in 2013 that this whole Western Ghats area should have certain zones reserved for ecologically sensitive areas, and that there was resistance to it from politicians and government and so on, because their voters didn't want to move. But having said that, it's also true, Nikunj, that in the Gadgil Commission report, the 3 villages that have been destroyed in the last 24, 48 hours did not get listed under ecologically sensitive areas. So even there, it was very difficult to predict that this would be an area where such a tragedy would occur. So I don't think we should be going around pointing fingers too much. I think we have to understand the scale of the problem, which, by the way, is getting worse. The global warming phenomenon, everyone knows the warming of the Arabian Sea has caused deep cloud systems to form that are creating extremely intense, heavy rainfall over shorter periods, which means the soil gets quickly saturated and landslides are possible. You may have heard that the forecast for that weekend, this last weekend, in that area was 62 meters of rain. They got 322 meters. Now, what do you do with that kind of thing? The earth is not able to sustain it. So that is a major challenge. We are relying very heavily on remote sensing because the ISRO people have a national remote sensing center. But experts are claiming that remote sensing just isn't good enough. You need grids on the ground to be able to anticipate landslides. We don't have that. We don't have an actual on-ground sensor grid. We need much more real-time data gathering and monitoring, which again is something that it shouldn't be beyond our technological abilities, but it's not been happening enough. Almost half of Kerala's terrain, 50%, consists of slopes exceeding 20 degrees. So you can imagine how susceptible we are to soil erosion and landslides. And that is the real challenge, the scale of the problem that Kerala is facing. We're a densely populated state. It's easy to sit here and say, move people, relocate them, but relocate them to where? To do what? What is their livelihood going to be once they relocated? How are they going to be able to manage if you take them away from their farms and their homes and their sources of income? These are questions that have to be addressed and that require vast amounts of resources as well as planning.
Well, Dr. Tharoor, I'm glad that you bring to this advanced warning systems. The Home Minister did talk about it. Many would say that that the nature of the tragedy is such that such kind of blaming each other or blame game should be avoided. But he has said that we have invested nearly 2,000 crore rupees in the advanced warning systems. Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan also had certain comments to make. But my question to you would remain, Dr. Tharoor, that you are a multiple-term MP from the state of Kerala. The danger there is lurking. But in many parts of the country also, the danger is increasingly becoming imminent.
I've lost your sound. Can't hear you. I've lost your sound, Nikunj.
Dr. Tharoor, if that audio is fine...
I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Dr. Tharoor, my colleagues are trying if they can get my audio through to you.
Could you repeat your last point, please?
Yes, I was saying that in Kerala the danger is lurking, but in many other parts of the country also that danger is very, very imminent. You know, ecologically sensitive zones are only increasing in the face of increasing onslaught of climate change. The issue is that, you know, there are some very educated, well, internationally exposed MPs, member of parliaments like you. Would you, going forward, Dr. Tharoor, be taking some sort of a position in the parliament or start to champion these causes which generally have been on the political back burner in this country, but are increasingly touching the lives of millions of people and cannot be any more ignored?
Look, I'm very, very happy to participate in the discussion, but I don't want to presume that an MP has any executive responsibility. The responsibility is always with the state government and the central government, because they're the ones who actually control the resources, the people, the staff, and have the right to take certain decisions. But I'm very happy to be part of a serious discussion, because prevention and mitigation are clearly essential to prevent these things from happening in future. When Mr. Amit Shah says 2,000 crores, it sounds like a big sum of money, but maybe that's not enough for something like on-ground sensor grids, for example. Maybe the mapping of potential landslide routes will take a huge amount of investment of time and effort and technology so that we can actually create legitimate understandings of areas that should be off-limit for settlements or even tourism activities or anything. Because, we've been talking in Kerala about ecotourism, and Wayanad's a perfect place for ecotourism. But maybe even that may be a problem if you lose a whole bunch of eco-tourists in the next landslide. That's not going to help Kerala either. So we need to find solutions. And I must admit that the ecology of our state is deeply fragile, and yet people have to live, people have to earn, people have to find means of livelihoods. And frankly, when politicians are asked to find policy solutions, they are also very strongly susceptible to what voters want and don't want. That's normal in a democracy. And voters don't want to be inconvenienced if they want to live. They don't want to die either, I want to assure you. But at the same time, they are extremely concerned about some of the more far-reaching recommendations of the ecologists. We'll have to find a realistic way of accommodating all of these interests.
And my final question to you, at least as far as this tragedy is concerned, Dr. Tharoor, is that surely now that the tragedy has happened, or the tragedies, at least in Kerala, as you have mentioned, the frequency of these tragedies is increasing. There must be at least ways to mitigate the crisis. There must at least be ways should be found to reduce the number of dead in these tragedies. Of course, the nature will take some time, some toll, but we have to ensure a way in which at least the human cost of these tragedies can be minimized. And the world has multiple examples as such where the human cost of these tragedies have been minimized actually.
Absolutely. So what is essential then is this kind of mitigation and prevention that I talked about. And on the prevention side, we need on-ground sensor grids that will actually anticipate landslides before they occur, particularly in areas that are prone to this. We need to actually create route maps, as it were, of landslide routes and have off-limit areas. We need to ensure, frankly, that in Kerala, where 17,000 square kilometers of our state on the western side of the Western Ghats has already been mapped as landslide prone, that we take special measures, and even the central government finds special resources for this. Because the truth is that between 2015 and 22, Kerala had the highest number of landslides in the whole of India. And of the 30 most landslide-prone districts in our country, 10 are in Kerala. So Kerala has a genuinely sort of fragile ecology and is very susceptible to landslides and floods. So we need to be able to help the states particularly. Equally, Kerala has to do much more about reforestation and prevention of deforestation, because in the 1950s, 85% of Wayanad was just forest. It was all under forest cover. Since then, 62% of the district's forests have disappeared. Plantations alone have risen by about 1,800%. So again, development is understandable, but development must go side by side with an awareness of the ecological risks. And that too is a way of preventing the worst happening. There are a number of reports. I think in the Lok Sabha today, Amit Shah ji said that IIT Delhi had apparently come up with a report 6 years ago that wanted 4,000 people to be moved out of the areas that have now been devastated. I've not seen that report. I don't know whether it was shared with the state government. We are in the opposition in the state as well, so I don't know how much the state government was aware of it. But the question would still come up to the state government: how do you move these 4,000 people? Where do you move them to? What kind of livelihood would they have? Where would you find the land for them in a densely populated Kerala? So we need broader, humane solutions, remembering that while lives are precious, livelihoods also cannot be overlooked.
Dr. Tharoor, my final question to you about the ruckus in the parliament. Your leader of opposition, got in the crosshairs of a rather casteist slur or a casteist commentary, and the Congress party is up in the arms, in fact, threatening to move a privilege motion against the Prime Minister. You are a third-term MP, you are a third-term member of the Lok Sabha. What are your thoughts on this, sir? Should that commentary could have completely been avoided?
Much of that speech was very avoidable, frankly, that former Minister Anurag Thakur delivered, including, I might add, the gratuitous references to a 35-year-old novel I wrote, a satirical novel called The Great Indian Novel. But he's given my writing publicity. I can't object to that part. I will object, however, to the fact that he has actually said that, those who do not know their caste should not be talking for a caste census. Number one, that is extremely inappropriate language. I'm sure it will be expunged from the record, but everyone has heard it, and therefore expunging it from the record doesn't solve the problem. Secondly, it has come out in a way that I think is demeaning in many ways to the standards of discourse in Parliament. And then for the Prime Minister to tweet urging everybody to listen to the speech was quite shocking. And this is why the Congress party is up in arms, Nikunj. We have really to maintain a decent standard of conversation and civility. If we're going to use Parliament as the temple of democracy, the highest legislative forum of our country, there must be certain standards. Our speaker keeps saying, is Sadan ka garima, but where is the garima in this kind of talk?
Thank you, Dr. Tharoor, very much. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's a sad day for your state, and your thoughts and prayers would be with your fellow Malayalis. I won't take any more of your time. I wish that Kerala is safeguarded, ring-fenced against any such future tragedies, Dr. Tharoor.
Thank you very much, Nikunj. Absolutely. Take care.